Hi, I'm Lucie Huang. I work in our commercial industrial group, and I do a lot of large commercial buildings in the downtown network, but I do a lot of different things. And this isn't a case study, but it's, I'm going to talk to you about custom projects. So custom projects is kind of our catch-all for anything else that wasn't talked about today. So basically, a custom project is anything that saves energy that you can prove in our service area, and we can probably give you funding. And this kind of ties back to the early and often thing that we're touting. So if you think you have a project but you're not sure if it qualifies, call us and we'll talk to you. We're happy to talk to you. So some common sources of these custom projects, they can be found anywhere, but some common ones are new construction beyond code. So if you're using RS-29 or performance-based code compliance, that would be through us. Or a lot of the new construction standard incentives are based on equipment efficiencies. So if you're doing something else like oversized cooling tower or bypass dampers or something like that, anything that's beyond code, we can help you with. Industrial processes, most of those are custom because they're one-off. Data centers are a very common source of custom projects because we have so many of them now and because they use so much energy. If you do cold aisle containment or controls on the fans, more economizer, more water side economizer, we can give you money for that. And that ties into control, so any kind of HVAC controls, scheduling, and ventilation economizer, not just data centers can benefit from more economizer. So some examples specifically, and this is not exclusive, these are just some examples to get you thinking of different ideas. So oversized ducts, so we talked about oversized cooling tower, oversized ducts or oversized plenums. If you're putting in a duct anyway, if it's bigger and it has less pressure drop, you'll be using less fan energy, so we can actually pay for that. Heat recovery, that's free heat from your exhaust stream, from any building exhaust, or maybe water heating, your compressor. If you recover that heat and you have electric heat, we can provide funding for that. Data centers, again, anything that saves energy in data centers like high efficiency UPS, again using more water side or air side economizer. So increasing economizer hours we usually talk about to save energy because we have that great 55-degree air almost all the time that won't need cooling. So bringing in more air saves you energy on the cooling side. However, on the other hand, if your facility needs a lot of heating, and maybe you're bringing in too much air then because you're having to heat that air, so decreasing economizer hours might save you energy. It depends on your situation. And I'm not going to go over these in detail, but these are just some of the rates that we have for custom incentives, and they're all over the board, but these are just common measures that we've seen that range from 23 cents to 27 cents. Some are 10 cents. So I don't know if anybody's already told you through the course of the day that our rates are based on the life of the measure. So the longer we expect the life to be, the more incentive we give per kilowatt hour saved that first year. So here's an example of a project we've actually funded. So it's a bypass damper. The person installed bypass to bypass the heating coils and cooling coils when they don't need them. So not only are you bringing in outside air that you don't have to condition, you're bypassing those coils, so you're saving that pressure drop, and then you're saving fan energy. So this was a rather large project, as you can see, 250 horsepower. But they saved over 100,000 kilowatt hours, and we gave them $29,000 in incentive. And those pictures are just examples of the dampers they use. Some are horizontal on the bottom there, and some are vertical. Of course, the vertical ones, they had a lot more surface area to do the bypass and save pressure. So the process, you've probably been talked to about process this whole day. So it's pretty similar. Submit your application, meet with your EMA. We'll come out and take a look at your site. Submit the custom incentive proposal. So that's where this is a little different than our custom incentives. I think you've seen all our different spreadsheets and worksheets that we use. Custom, it's wide open. So I can't say anything goes. We have to approve it, and we have to agree with your assumptions and your calculation methodology, but it's kind of a blank slate. but it does have to be verifiable. So you can't say, we're going to install this black box, and it's going to save you 10%. Well, we have to know what it's saving and why. And that goes into the review process that we would have with you after we walk through the facility. So once we agree on the calculation methodology and so forth, we will draft the custom incentive agreement. And once the customer signs it, then you're free to order or install or purchase any equipment. And I just need to mention, since this is custom and not a standard incentive, when it goes through the approval process, it's more subject to change. So oftentimes people want to quote, well, what can I tell my customer what they're going to get so they know what the payback is? Well, we can give you an estimate, but when it goes through the approval process, that could change. And I can say I don't know that it's ever gone up when it's gone through the approval process. So just keep that in mind. So the custom incentive proposal, that's the meat of this type of project. So we want to establish the baseline and agree on what the baseline operating conditions are, the equipment, the controls, set points. So it helps to have schematics or any kind of drawings. And we want to know what the controls, how they're working. The proposed, same thing. We want a detail of what you're going to install, how the controls are going to be, if you're changing any set points, and again, schematics and cut sheets are required. So when can you implement the project? Again, this is not retroactively. So after the contract is signed by both the customer and Seattle City Light, you can purchase equipment or install it. And I've been asked before too whether you can order equipment before the contract is signed. So that's a case-by-case basis. Sometimes if we've already been talking to you and we're close to an agreement and it just has, we're waiting for some cut sheets or something, and the equipment takes 6 months to order and the customer needs to get it in before it's cooling season, we might say, okay, sure, go ahead and order it, but don't install it until we have the contract in place. So we try and work with you to make it work out for everybody. So some tips and tricks for going through this process smoothly. Apply early and often. Again, if you don't know, call us. We won't bite. Document the baseline conditions. Try and do that early on because, for example, if your energy savings are from saving chiller energy, well, if we're going to trend that, we need to trend it during cooling season, not during the winter. That won't give us very good data. Equipment inventory, hopefully that's easy to get, drawings, facility drawings from the engineer. Be specific on how you're saving energy, if it's fan, if it's set point, and electronic copy of the calculation spreadsheet. That really lets us make sure we can get in all the details of the assumptions made and the calculation methodology, the bin, if you're using bin analysis, which is a common source of calculations for savings in custom projects. So it's a team effort. We definitely want to make sure the customer knows what's going on, which they often do, but it's good for them to know what might be required too, in case it takes extra resources on their end for trending or shutting off equipment when things are getting installed, and also timelines for signing. So, okay, we went through all this project, your project got approved, the customer has a signed incentive contract, now what? They probably want to get paid. So you install the ECMs. What we need to do is go back out and inspect the completed project. Whatever M&V was done, measurement and verification, we want to make sure it showed the energy savings that were predicted. So I should just mention that measurement and verification is a very common, and trending is very common for custom projects because there's no set spreadsheet that was set up. And documentation for this payment package includes a copy of the paid invoice, but I guess that's true for every project, right? And then as-built drawings and controls and any test reports that were done. So measurement and verification, there was a more detailed session done downstairs in the morning, but typically, and this, again, this is where you want to make sure you read the contract, but typically when we get trend data, we want it in 15-minute intervals for about 2 weeks so that we make sure we don't get like the holidays or something where things are not really typical. and 15-minute increments with the same timestamp for all the parameters, so that in case an assumption is made in the controls, if you have this pressure, certain pressure in the duct, then your fan's going to be at this speed. We want to make sure those line up so that all the assumptions built into the spreadsheet play out. Final equipment list, final set points. So we want to make sure the set points, which might be part of the energy savings, are implemented, that said they were going to be implemented in the proposal. And that can be documented with screenshots. And I should mention that, okay, maybe you propose something with a certain set point, but the building didn't really operate very well in that condition. So that's fine. We would then adjust the incentive appropriately. So if you couldn't cut if that temperature wasn't something you could achieve, it's a lower temperature or higher temperature or whatever, then we would recalculate and provide an incentive based on the new final energy savings. So some tips and tricks for payment to make it a smoother process. So read the contract to make sure you know what's required for verifying energy savings. Be prepared for trending, because that's a very common requirement for custom incentives. And track the invoices or payments if it's a long project. Often customs are, for example, new construction. It could take a year, right? So, but the custom project is just one part of it. So the better those invoices are tracked that relate to the measure, the easier it is at the end. Don't forget to tell us that the project is finished so that we can start the payment process. We don't want to be sitting there 6 months later know that the project was complete. And then sometimes intermediate inspections are appropriate and make life easier also. So for example, if you're changing some VAV boxes and we need to inspect those, it's much easier to do during construction when nobody's occupying the space and when the ceiling tiles are open than after and all the nice finishes are in. This is just another final example of a very successful data center custom project where they put cold and hot aisle separation in and changed the, there were more details downstairs because they actually went over this case study, so I purposely didn't put details to make people stay, but I will tell you. So the return temperature was 68 degrees, and I think they managed to raise it to 82 degrees, so a really big rise in temperatures that they had to supply, and you can see that precipitous drop in energy use. So we were able to give them $40,000 incentive, and that was actually a 70% cost cap, so that was the maximum amount we could give them, which means they had a pretty good payback. So if you have an idea, call us early and call us often. You can, all our information is there, and I'm sure it's in all the brochures that you've gotten today.